So this is the Darwin Centre. It is 60 meters long, 300 millimeters thick, giant concrete egg in West London. And I remember this building because as a student, I saw the architect C.F. Muller present this project, and they said, this is a very sustainable building. And I thought, it's an interesting thing to say. What do you mean it's a very sustainable building? It seems like a giant concrete egg. And the guy, he was quite annoyed, and he was like, no, Finn. He didn't know my name, but he was like, no, boy. What you don't understand is that this building's going to last for 200 years. So yes, it has a lot of carbon, but you take that carbon, you divide it over 200 years, that gives you your per year carbon emissions, and that's what you should be focusing on. Of course, he's dead wrong, and we know this now because the situation is just far more urgent than he kind of assumed it was. We don't have 200 years. The last IPCC report highlights these tipping points, right? These kind of ecological snowball effects. So if you hit the tipping point, everything gets much harder to solve. And the first of those is like 11 years away. So the implications for this are sort of really big for architecture because we've got very used to making this kind of calculation, the spread it out over a long period of time calculation. And it's possible that a lot of our kind of most seductive material strategies, when we invoke hard-wearingness and longevity, are always associated with materials that involve a high blast of carbon on day one. And maybe we have to completely rethink that paradigm. Maybe we have to even abandon it entirely. Maybe we have to embrace materials that are actually not very hard-wearing at all, that wear out quickly and require a lot of maintenance, but don't come with that massive blast of carbon. What would that kind of architecture be like? What would an architecture of constant maintenance be like? Well, this is a useful case study. It's thatch. This is Burgenland, but thatch is pretty much as global as people and plants are. Here in Switzerland, in America, in Bali, in India, in Germany, in the UK, and so on. Thatch is an amazing material. It grows very fast. Its carbon emissions are almost nothing. It actually sequesters a bit of carbon. It has these incredible sculptural qualities. We don't use it very much because it has very high maintenance requirements. A roof like this would need to be replaced every 10 to 15 years. But what would it mean if we were able to turn that weakness on its head and start specifying thatch, not despite it needing a lot of maintenance, but because it needs a lot of maintenance? Well, this is another interesting case study. This is Mali's Great Mosque in Djenné. It was first built around the 13th century and then rebuilt in 1907. And it's covered with these protruding bundles of sticks called toran. And they're kind of decorative, but they're not just decorative. They're actually the scaffolding that allows the facade of the mosque to be replastered with mud render every year after heavy rains. And I think this duality of the toran, something that is both a piece of architectural expression, but also an indicator of a culture of repair. You can find that elsewhere in design history. In Japan, of course, Boro technique, where you repair the same garment again and again and again and hand it down through generations. Or kintsugi, where a piece of smashed ceramics is stuck back together with lacquer dusted with precious metals. I think that thatch and the mosque and kintsugi and Boro are all kind of exciting metaphors, in a way, for an architecture that doesn't sort of shy away from damage and repair, that actually embraces it, that treats it as part of the history of the object. The building is never complete. The bowl is never complete. Everything is in a constant state of becoming. What would it mean to apply that paradigm to contemporary architecture in an urban context? Well, actually, I'm not sure it is that hard to imagine. When you think of the lengths that the high-tech guys went to achieve their architecture, these are window cleaning cranes, but they're also architectural form, right? Here at HSBC, here again at Lloyd's, here in number 1 Blackfriars, the whole roof lifts off to reveal this cleaning device. So this is cleaning as architecture, and I think Goldfinger does something a little bit similar at Trellick Tower. Here, the boiler room is elevated to this extraordinary architectural status, literally higher than anything else in the building. So if window cleaning and the humdrum domestic labor of heating up some water can become rich seams for architectural expression. Maybe maintenance could as well. And what would it mean for us as architects to kind of fall in love with maintenance and to abandon our infatuation with hard-wearing